So in case you did watch my most recent video on the NHL's current top divas, well, this is kind of going to overlap a little, as in there's a couple players on this list that, to me, also fall into the diva category. But even still, I'm going to try and elaborate even more on inter-team conflict and rivalries than before. Players here, similarly to the last list, have displayed long-term patterns of conflict and dysfunction wherever they've decided to so graciously grace teams with their presence at. And with that, here are the top 4 current locker room cancers around the league today. Now, before everyone gets bent out of shape and chalks this up to me just being a salty Penguins fan, hear me out. Phil is an extremely rare type of player with an elite skill set. He has an amazing shot and is a rightful 2-time Cup champ. So, great player, and there's no taking away from or denying that. However, Kessel is an anomaly, as in he's been able to, in the past, get by with doing so little outside of sniping in the ozone. And yes, it has worked for him for the majority of his career, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that how Phil does Phil things hasn't always set well with particular coaches and teammates. Most of us can recall how miserable Kessel was in Toronto, and for good reason. The team was going through some very tough stretches, and besides captain at the time Dion Phaneuf getting the brunt of the media's hostility was number 81. Difficult to coach was one suggested theory as to why Ron Wilson and Kessel had brushes of conflict during Wilson's tenure with the team. The forward also managed to get into a physical altercation with teammate David Booth, which unfortunately didn't help his image. Then Kessel gets a fresh start and is moved to Pittsburgh, which compared to Toronto is a small market as far as media presence is concerned. But it was during the back-to-back Stanley Cup runs that tension between Kessel and line-mate Evgeny Malkin then bubbled to the surface, which is now beyond comical. But at the time, it was a sign that there could have been some underlying conflict within the team.
Malkin declined to elaborate on how his on-ice relationship with Kessel fell apart, but it's clear he grew tired of feeling caught between the ongoing Sullivan-Kessel rift, according to multiple team and league sources. Those sources also say Malkin had come to believe Kessel was content with 2 titles and mostly interested in his statistics. Malkin was worried he'd be seen the same way if Kessel remained his winger.
And eventually, what we already suspected came to light. After longtime Penguin Pascal Dupuis, when asked about the Kessel-Malkin rift, said, and I quote, "I'm not sure the message passes well between both players, 71 and 81, and the man behind the bench." End quote. So, after having been in the middle of conflict in 2 different locker rooms, and on 2 separate teams, I think it's fair to say that Kessel may not be the most agreeable teammate and easiest player to coach around. As I said, this video will sort of overlap with my last, and so I'm going to give those who already viewed it some fresh details on Kane and the other ones to kind of make up for it. Anyways, one term that Jets head coach Paul Maurice used to describe Evander Kane's tenure with the team was a bad marriage. And in my opinion, it seems to describe the awkward stint perfectly. As a forward who was playing hockey in a smaller market in Manitoba, was displaying an image or persona that wasn't exactly one that appealed to fans and certainly didn't help his case with teammates either. Flashy, individualistic, Kane, as a young player at the time, didn't exactly vibe with the locker room culture in Winnipeg, and clashed multiple times with defenseman at the time, Dustin Byfuglien. Besides point-blank flipping Kane the bird that one time, the two reportedly had a falling out after Evander showed up to a team function in a tracksuit and out of dress code. After Kane was traded to Buffalo, he wasn't shy about his feelings towards the organization, in retrospect, saying that he felt unappreciated while playing through injuries for the team. Regardless of the move and change in location, problems still followed the forward. This time, though, the player Kane clashed with was defenseman at the time, Justin Falk, who could be seen and heard while losing it on his teammate in practice, telling him to shut up and calling him selfish. And just like that, for Kane, there were 2 failed experiments as he was traded to the Bay Area. Vivacious, outgoing, and charismatic. A player that never shies away from the spotlight, and has been known to embrace it. But over the years, while playing for the various teams that he's been on, Subban has been in the middle of multiple rifts and rivalries in the locker room. The first real time in the NHL that Subban clashed with a teammate was during his time in Montreal. Subban and Brendan Gallagher could be shown getting into physical altercations in practice, and later during games, after Subban was traded. So for a bitter rivalry to form that's carried on for years on end, and there has to be a reason, right? One central theme that seemed to follow Subban around is that his teammates don't quite know how to adjust or how to deal with his personality. Gallagher, for instance, who is a self-sacrificial workhorse. Sure, opposing teams hate him, but there's no doubting that he's the heart and soul for the Habs. Therefore, coming across a player like Subban, well, there's definitely some opportunity there for the two to butt heads. And to confirm pretty much what I just said, I'll let Gallagher do the talking here.
Like I said, I don't know why we're talking about him. That's what he wants. You can let him talk about himself all night. I'm sure he'll give you guys enough lines. I'm not going to help that out.
Anyway, so then Subban moves down south where problems seem to follow. For a guy that just won the Norris to be traded almost right after, shocked the hockey world to its core. And then after arriving in New Jersey, well, the dysfunction still followed. And without sounding like a broken record here, Subban most recently got into a scrum with teammate Miles Wood during a team scrimmage. So yeah, big personality that's great for the media, but sometimes bad for the locker room, if you catch my drift. One name that's been circulating on hockey Twitter for quite some time, for not the best reasons, is Tony DeAngelo. Why? Well, similarly to the others, DeAngelo isn't exactly the best teammate. Since his time spent playing for Sarnia of the OHL, the defenseman has displayed a troubling pattern of discriminatory and antisocial behavior, as in, he's an extremely hard guy to just get along with. Coming into the league, as I alluded to, DeAngelo had a previous record of saying offensive slurs towards teammates, and he was suspended twice by the OHL for violating the policy for keeping homophobic, racist, and sexist language out of the game. So by now, you can kinda get the concept that this guy is just a flat-out jerk. Anyways, for whatever reason, the Tampa Bay Lightning decided to take their chances and drafted him anyways, but while playing for their AHL affiliate in the Syracuse Crunch, DeAngelo was scratched for 8 games consecutively for reportedly a combination of attitude issues, undisciplined play, and an aversion to defense. So, DeAngelo gets moved up to the Big Apple, and the same continuous pattern follows. This interview with David Quinn is pretty telling, as the coach says a lot with what he doesn't say.
What is it that you see from being around him every day or from watching him play or practice that doesn't keep him in the lineup every day now?
Well, I mean, there are certain things that are just non-negotiable, and he's made a lot of progress and a lot of strides, and we've all watched what he's done on the ice, and he's made a lot of strides off the ice too, just like all young players have to make, but there are certain things that are non-negotiable.
There's certain things that are non-negotiable. Attitude and demeanor, perhaps. Regardless, after declining defensively on ice and being scratched multiple games for the Rangers, DeAngelo made sure to go out with a bang from the team. As a defenseman who didn't exactly play his best game against Pittsburgh, he recently decided to try and take it out on goaltender Alex Georgiev following the overtime loss. And reportedly, veteran Chris Kreider stepped in, gave DeAngelo a nice knuckle sandwich, and then called it a day. Due to a combination of his actions and bad start to the season, DeAngelo was put on waivers in result, which I'm pretty sure he's going to clear.